One of the other orchids that I wanted to show you this month is this Osmoglossum pulchellum. Now, I bought this as a tiny seedling in 2010, so I've had it a very long time. And the problem that I had was that it always grew very well, but I hardly got any flowers. But this year, I've managed it, as you can see. And they have, as expected, a wonderful narcissus scent. And even better, quite often the flower stems are a little bit pendulous, so they bend down and you see quite a lot of them tied up. But this year they've grown really sturdily and have remained upright. So I'm really pleased. This got to the stage where it's a very big plant and I divided it and gave some bits away to other people, who then, one of them managed to start flowering it beautifully, just as this is. And when I looked it up, because they come from Central America at really quite high altitudes, it's basically a cool to cold growing orchid. So last year I made a shelf outside the greenhouse and put it on there for the whole of the summer, and then only brought it in about November when it started to get really cold. And so I was thrilled when I started to see the flower stems developing. Previous years, I have had the flowers developing, but they've always aborted. And quite clearly it was because I just wasn't giving it the conditions that it would like. I've just come a bit closer so you can see the flowers a bit more clearly. They're really beautiful. And with such a wonderful scent, combined with the fact that they last about 4 weeks, they're really enjoyable for a very long time. Next year I might be able to show you a much more impressive display of flowers. What I should say is that when I brought it in from outside at the end of the summer, I put it down on the shelf, which is sort of quite low down in the coolest part of the greenhouse. I'll just take you outside to show where its summer quarters were, because that's quite interesting. So we're just outside the greenhouse, as you can see, and this is the shelf that I built last spring for some of the orchids that I grow in the summer out here to sit on. And this is where the Osmoglossum was for the whole of the growing season, right until the end of the year. You might notice there's another orchid out here. This is Dendrobium kingianum, which incredibly has been out all winter this year because it's been mild. And this is also a very sheltered space. And it's got flowers coming, quite a lot of flowers, although it would have had more if it had more light. And next year, especially towards the end of the season, I think I'll put it somewhere where it gets a bit more light. Right, we're back in the warm again. One thing that I would like to point out about putting orchids outside for the summer, because a lot of them really like it, the big problem with putting orchids outside and then bringing them in is that when you bring them in, the chances are there are slugs and snails and woodlice in the compost, which can then migrate to the other plants that are in the greenhouse. So you have to be very careful when you bring in orchids at the end of the year from outside, that you don't then introduce these wretched pests to all your other plants. What I do is I just sort of keep them somewhere away from everything else, maybe down on the floor for a few days, maybe put some slug pellets down on the ground and then see what's attracted, and come out at night with a torch and see what's crawled out of the pot. And that way I managed to more or less combat that sort of problem. I must just quickly show you this Pleurothallis truncata again, which I filmed last month. I said that I was a bit disappointed because all the flowers were on this side and there weren't so many on that side. Well, we're about 4 weeks later and this side is looking even better, and on that side you can see it's got a whole mass of these beautiful little delicate strings of bright orange beads. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm really pleased with it. It's never been as good as this before. Now, at this time of the year, a very good companion to the Pleurothallis truncata is this Mediocalcar bifolium. It's a really delightful miniature orchid. Beautiful little white and sort of orange flowers will in time form a great big mat with probably dozens or if not hundreds of little flowers. A friend of mine who gave me this has a great big one. It's really impressive. And they last a long time too, although they're very tiny. I've got this growing on a piece of cork, and it comes from quite high altitudes, so it's a cool to cold growing orchid. Interesting, the Pleurothallis comes from South America. This comes from Asia, sort of New Guinea way, so it's they're a long way apart in the wild. But they look as a sort of two delightful little miniature orchids with little jewel-like flowers. It's a really enjoyable orchid to have. Now, I've just swung the camera around to the sort of warmer side of the greenhouse. And I wanted to show you this. This is Phalaenopsis lobbii, a beautiful little species orchid. Has these tiny flowers that sort of dangle and sort of nod as soon as they're touched. And they last a long time too. It comes from quite a wide range of altitudes, so it's listed as growing sort of warm down to cool. I've got it growing on this piece of cork where you can see it's covered with roots now. And that sort of very extensive root system that it's developed over the last few years contributes to the fact that it is now flowering quite freely. This one's got 3 flower spikes. It's been out already for about 3 or 4 weeks, and the flowers are still looking absolutely perfect. So of the species Phalaenopsis, which I think are in a way more charming than a lot of the hybrids, this is a really good species to have. I've actually got 2. This one is lagging behind the other one in terms of the flowering time. The reason I've got 2, which you might think is a bit odd, is because this one was supposed to be a different colour form, but it turned out to be exactly the same as the first one, but I don't really mind. And as you can see, this one's possibly even doing better. It's got 2 flower spikes coming, so between the 2 of them, that is really good value for money, I think. Now, it is supposed, according to the internet, to be scented, but I've never noticed any scent whatsoever. Anyway, those are the plants that I wanted to show you in this video. As always, thanks ever so much for watching. If you have any questions, do ask them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer them. And again, as with all my videos, if I've said something that you don't think is quite right, or you disagree with, or you've got more information that you think you can add, do put it in the comments, because it all helps to contribute to everyone's enjoyment of orchids and also finding out more about them. So, for this episode, thanks very much. Bye.